Birds fly high. You know how I feel. Sun in the sky. You know how I feel. Breeze drifting on by. You know how I feel. It's a new dawn. It's a new day, it's a new life for me, and I feel good. Fish in the sea. You know how I feel. River running free. Well, you know how I feel. Blossom on the tree. You know how I feel. It's a new dawn. It's a new day. It's a new life for me, and I'm feeling good. Dragonfly out in the sun, you know what I mean to show. Butterflies all having fun, you know what I mean. Sleeping peaceful days to come, that's what I mean. And this whole world is a whole world and a new world for me, and I'm feeling good.
Doug Rapetti and Yaron Spiewak. So it's a new dawn. Are you ready to have a new dawn and a new day? Boy, this morning was a new dawn with the sun after that fantastic rain last night, right? Yeah, good. So how many of you, is this your first time in a metaphysical or New Thought Community Church the first Sunday after the Gregorian calendar has rolled into the new year? One. So we have one. I'm going to let that joke go. Okay, so be proud of me, people. All right, so, who said aw? So in this particular philosophy and faith, and many of them, we address the foundations of the teachings of the science of mind, specifically here at this church on a Sunday morning to kick that off. And so Happy New Year and welcome to the foundation. The theme for the month is developing the foundation of living the life of the divine, which I know is a lot, but that's the basis from which we're moving into looking at the teachings of the science of mind in a new way. And if you were here last week, we kicked that off. And if you weren't and you'd like to see that, you can go online and see that on our website website and or our YouTube channel, and there is a handout that goes with it. And if you'd like to get that, you can email me and I'll be happy to send it to you. And that handout is a tool to use as we go through the year to continue to release anything that we're attached to that's holding us back from fulfilling living our life of the divine. So this morning, we're going to step into building the foundation over the year of living that life of the divine. Sounds like a big task a little bit, doesn't it? Well, it is. It is. And it's not. But I think there's no way to start that except with this very specific reading. So are you ready for it? All right, so here we go. A lady goes to see her priest one day and tells him, "Father, I have a problem. I have 2 female parrots, but they only know how to say one thing." "What do they say?" the priest inquired. "They say, 'Hey, fellas, we're birds of the night. Do you want to have some fun?'" "Isn't that awful?" the woman laughs. "That's obscene," the priest exclaimed. Then he thought for a moment. "You know," he said, "I may have a solution to your problem. I have 2 male parrots who talk, and I've taught them to pray and read the Bible. Bring your 2 parrots over to my house, and we'll put them in the cage with Francis and Job." That's their name. "Now my parrots can teach your female parrots to praise and worship God. And your parrots are sure to stop saying that indecent phrase that they're saying." Whew. The woman let out a sigh and said, "Thank you. What a wonderful solution." So the next day, she brought her female parrots to the priest's house. As he ushered the woman in, she saw these 2 male parrots, Francis and Job, inside their cage, holding rosary beads and actually praying. Their pious little bird faces were upturned toward heaven, with their beaks moving ever so slightly as they prayed intently to the Lord. Very impressed, the woman walked over and placed her parrots inside the cage with these very devout male parrots. After a few minutes, sure enough, the female parrots cried out in unison, "Whew! Hey, gents, do you want to have some fun? We are birds of the night." A long moment of silence ensued. Shocked, one male parrot looked over at the other male parrot and exclaimed, "Hey, put your beads away, Frank. Our prayers have been answered." Welcome to metaphysics. I couldn't help it. What we're addressing today is called The Thing Itself. That's the first chapter of the book, The Science of Mind. And if you have spent time with a priest in the context of talking to them in the best methodology of praying, or have spent any time in your life asking for the Lord to answer your prayers, then you will probably be shocked to hear the term, the thing itself, referring to the power of God. As I said before, it's the norm in the centers across the world, known as the Centers for Spiritual Living and other metaphysical New Thought churches, who follow the teaching of the Science of Mind, to begin with chapter 1 of this fantastic book called The Science of Mind. And the first chapter, as I've said already, is titled The Thing Itself. And for the next 3 weeks, I'm going to present chapters 2, 3, and 4 to you as well, because it's believed that these 4 chapters are the foundation of the philosophy/teaching that was written by Ernest Holmes, that I referred to earlier, that's known in current day terms as a philosophy of faith and a way of life. Following the thing itself is chapter 2, which is called The Way It Works, chapter 3, What It Does, and chapter 4, How to Use It. Now, in this moment, if you're a bit bristled by hearing the term "it" for the word God, you're in absolutely the perfect and right place. And if you've heard that term before, and it's not bristling you but warming your heart because you've heard it before and you relate to this impersonal, omniscient, omnipresent power that is unfailing by nature, that expresses itself by you and by me, I'm happy to know that you have that feeling, and I invite you to let that feeling go, and to open yourself up to hearing and receiving not only facets and components of this chapter, but what I'm going to share today with you, so that you step into the realm of being a conscious evolutionist on the pathway of finding your personal self-empowerment through a spiritual awakening. I'm sure many of you, just like I have, year after year after year, have heard this particular chapter addressed and have heard it oftentimes the same way. But I invite you today to open your mind and to open your soul and to open your being to being receptive and trusting that you're here today to hear what you're called to hear. Not because I'm the one presenting this information. I'm just a conduit for that which your consciousness is ready to receive. And so I invite you to give yourself permission to know that in this very moment you are evolving into a higher state of consciousness. That the information that was written by Dr. Ernest Holmes and the foreword that was written by Gene Houston is just simply a resonance field of energy that's being put into words that's meeting you where you are in consciousness, and it is the catalyst for you to grab it and take it and use it in a way for your consciousness to expand. That in and of itself, that practice, is one of the foundational components of this teaching of letting go of what was, of not being attached to what is to be, staying present in the moment, knowing that you are fully present and wholly the power of the thing itself already. And the more that you align yourself with that power and with unrestraint, let the law do its part through you, your experience of the thing itself will expand. Whew, that was a lot. Okay, did that make sense though? Good, because it did to me too. All right, so we're going to start off by hearing the foreword in the most modern publication of the book, The Science of Mind, which was written by Gene Houston. Any of you in the room know Gene Houston? If you don't, Gene Houston is someone who is a catalyst in what is known as the human potential movement. She holds a doctorate in psychology and a doctorate in religion. If you have never experienced her, I invite you to go online and watch some of her YouTube videos. I just want to warn you, she is a trip. Not like in Linda Tripp, like in a trip like really out there and wild and cool and fun. An amazing woman and a brilliant mind. And here's what she says as the foreword to the book, The Science of Mind, or what she writes. The science of mind offers us the passion for a new possibility with the precise and clear directions for building a new matrix of mind and manifestation. So hear that anew, as if you didn't hear it just a moment ago. This philosophy, this faith, this way of life, the science of mind, offers each of us the passion. Now, I believe passion, when broken down, is pass I on, meaning that when you live in your passion, you're passing the thing itself on to life itself, which is always propagating more of itself out of itself, but the only way that it can do that individually is through the individual. All right? Take that in, deep breath, here we go. The science of mind offers the passion, the opportunity for you to pass your light on, for a new possibility, along with the precise and clear directions, it's giving us those directions, for building a new matrix of mind. In other words, a new foundational component of your consciousness as the mind of God, and a possibility for clear directions on how building a new manifestation. In other words, how you use this new matrix of mind in a way to then manifest or bring forth through yourself an experience of life that is in alignment with the state of mind that you're choosing to have. She goes on to write, the science of mind, remember, which is a philosophy, a faith, and a way of life. That's how one is wrapping an understanding or couching the book itself, right? Which is really a lifestyle, shows us how to activate the constructive imagination and how to hold in thought and feeling the intention and energy for healing, for holing, W-H-O-L-I-N-G, and for creation. So hear that again. And I'm going to go really, I'm saying, the science of mind shows us how to activate, in other words, to put into motion the constructive imagination. She's talking about the constructive imagination, not only of the power that is creative, the thing itself, but how we individualize that power, in other words, our own personal imagination. And as we do that, how to also at the same time hold or use our thoughts and our feelings with intention, right? What we want them to be, what we want that experience to feel and be like, and then the energy that is required for healing, for holding, and for co-creation. So let's break that down. So what she's telling us here is that this teaching, this philosophy, gives us the ability, through its tools and its principles, to wake up within ourselves, imagining a life that is reflective of a consciousness that is healed, meaning revealing its innate nature, peace, power, beauty, joy, light, life, love, and wisdom. Holding, meaning a reflection of its wholeness, which is already there. It's its nature, therefore it's your nature, so you don't have to do anything for that to be in existence in your life, but there's a lot you have to do to remove anything that's contrary to it. In other words, that's called developing consciousness, right? And then the next piece of that is co-creation. In other words, using your mind in a way to not only eliminate that which is contrary to your divine nature, to revealing through your life a healed mind, one that does not think of itself as separate from that power, and then to use your imagination to say that knowing that I am whole, knowing that I am healed, what is it that I would like to manifest in form, whether that's an emotional state of being or something in physical form, through the law of creation, that in so doing will make my life better. And does that make sense? And how many of you have ever used that process in that way? Many of you, right? And probably we all have, whether we're conscious of it or not. But what she's telling us, Jean Houston here, is she's saying, in this particular fashion, this philosophy, this faith, this way of life, we have the tools within that Ernest has written to do that more and more and more and more. Now, the key to that is building a foundation in your consciousness so that you can live a life of the divine, as opposed to living your life as a human hoping to put into there your divinity. What I think is of great power for us is to choose to live our life as a divine being and using that foundation as from a perspective to how we then navigate our humanity. Otherwise, it becomes taxing to try to bring in the life of God all the time so that we can heal that which is happening in our life, which we've been causation to, but we can't really figure out why the hell it's showing up, thinking, how did this happen to me? But when we awaken to understanding that it's not happening to us, nothing is happening to us, it's all happening through us, and that we are part of that, and it's revealing itself through us to the degree that we're choosing to know and know that we know that we're healed or healing, that we're whole, self-contained within us. We're whole. We are the power, the presence, the infinite nature of the divine itself. And that we have the ability to use that and co-create a life that is better for us and the world at large. Houston goes on to write that evolution, which is what I truly believe we're called to do in the 21st century as metaphysicians here, is to live as conscious evolutionists, to use our minds to take quantum leaps in what we can do as mental beings, not solely for the purpose of manifesting, which was a 20th century idea, but for a healing to take place in the world, not just as a concept, but as an actual experience, to use our mind, to use our physicality, to use our abundance, to use everything to create a shift on this planet so that if nothing more, that the physical planet itself has greater longevity, but that we're leaving the physical world and the mental, emotional, spiritual world better for those that are going to walk the planet behind us. In other words, make sure that the footprint that we're leaving on humanity is one that is a reflection of us being consciously awake and alert and alive to the power that exists within us. to stop pretending like we don't know. We know, it's been proven scientifically that we know that the same energy that is within us is cosmically the same, cellularly, as the cosmos. It is no longer theory. So what she goes on to say then is that evolution is seen to follow involution, wherein we discover that our minds are stargates and our bodies are cells of mysteries that give us keys to the emerging phase of our existence. Now, that was Houston speak. I just told you before what I believe she's saying to us there, is that we're being called to know that our minds are stargates to that infinite power that exists as the divine. Once again, matters not what you call it, but it matters greatly that you call it more and more and more and more and more, because in so doing, you're developing, you're involving, you're invoking your consciousness, your use of your mind in a way that what it must then spit back out is evolution. Does that make sense? Evolution. And that our bodies, our physical bodies, and the body of life itself is certainly celled of mysteries, meaning there's a lot that we don't understand, but the combination of continuing to attempt to understand the physical world while knowing that what we have within us as the mental world are the keys to an emerging phase of our existence. In other words, not trying to replicate anything that came before us. Now, we've also learned that the way to do that in today's world is to not live in the future, but to plant ideas, to use our imagination, to live with faith of what we want the future to be like. But the future can only show up the way that we desire it to be by consciously living in the present moment. Heavy, right? Freeing at the same time, right? You don't have to get on your knees and ask for forgiveness unless you're doing it for yourself. You're not placing your power in some deity outside of yourself, hoping that it's going to approve of your behavior. So, Ernest, the great teacher, also known as Ernest Holmes, Ernie, to those who knew him intimately, I'm just kidding, the author and the founder of Science of Mind, this is what she goes on to write, Houston, was one of the first to direct us to what is to be found in the vast ecology of inner space. Now, hear that again. I love that term. And I kind of love this stuff. Can you tell? So she says that Ernie was the author and the founder of The Science of Mind, a philosophy of faith, the way of life. And if any of you've read the book, it's not fun reading unless you're into that stuff, in the sense that you're not sitting down turning pages like you're reading a novel. It's actually kind of complex, and it doesn't really flow correctly the way it was edited. And so it's just kind of funky at times, right? But you can break it down and get stuff out of it like she's talking about, where he was the first to direct us to inquire as to what is to be found in the vast ecology of inner space. Do you ever think of your mind as inner space? I invite you to sit down at some point and go into meditation and look inward as if you're sitting out in the middle of a field, in the middle of nowhere, looking up at the sky, and all that you can see is darkness and sparkles of light that just continues infinitely. Why? Because it does. But then choose to believe that which you're seeing externally is actually a reflection of what's taking place internally. That's what they're speaking of as the vast ecology of inner space. And so also knowing that we only use, of our mind, we only use 8% of that consciously. So 92% of that is a subconscious activity or subjective mind, meaning that we can impact that 92% with the 8% in how we use it. But so often we believe, most of us in the world, and certainly the way that we show up in the world, is that we think it's like a 50-50 thing, right? Or it's a 60-40, that what's going on in my conscious mind is what's going to show up in the world, not realizing that there's this vast well, this inner space, this ecological inner space of mind that is all taking place. But when we choose to use that percent that's conscious, we have a great opportunity to impact what's showing up at the subjective or subconscious mind, and in so doing, then the experience of our life changes. And when our life changes, there's a ripple effect that moves out to all of life outside of us. All of life, not just those that we choose. Why? Because energy does not know physical boundaries. And that's all we are, is energy. We're this interconnectedness of this cosmic cellular activity that she's talking about. So she goes on to write, well then, we have no choice as we become conscious evolutionists of playing in the vast ecology of inner space, of using this conscious act of healing, of holding, of co-creation, then but to democratize greatness. In other words, to create a system within our mind to both manifest but understand the greatness of the divine that exists, and to utilize the whole continuum of human and divine potential. What she's telling us there is that it's not enough to know that the thing itself exists within you. That once you know that it's there, you're then called to use it anew. And then to use it anew. And then to use it, you get it? Anew. But in so doing, not just look inward. Since we are interconnected, to ask ourselves, then how can I use it not only for my own humanity, for my divinity, but the continuum of humanity and divinity? Now that's a big concept. I mean, imagine, and I'm not saying that metaphorically, imagine for a moment that in my mind, which is your mind, because your mind is her mind, and her mind is your mind, you get it? That if we started in my mind alone, I see and know that every human that I see in front of me is healed, is whole, and is using their co-creative abilities in a way that is creating a shift in humanity that radiates and manifests love. And then as I do it, Sarah takes it. And as Sarah takes it, then it moves to Jenny, and then to Gustave, and to Rachel, and it goes on. Literally think about that for a moment. Feel the energy that shifts as we do that. And it goes one by one, but it's not one by one. It's one awakening to the one, awakening to and as the one, which is building upon the one, which appears to be one of four, but it's really only one. And it's magnifying. And what that's doing is that's creating a soulful footprint or imprint, both on our individual subconscious when we allow it, but in the greatness of subconscious mind. And that's how to use the thing itself. I have 20 more minutes. No, I'm just kidding. Now, we can either take that example that I just gave us this morning, which is an intense concept, would you agree? It's an intense concept. Why? A, because somewhere deep within us we all know it's true, and we wonder why the hell we're not using it that way, or we're scared to death that we are being called to use it, and we don't know how to begin. And the way to begin is by releasing. It's by releasing anything and everything in our subconscious that not only just stimulates fear, because fear is a buzzword in the modern day mental healing world, but just anything that we step into that feels awkward for us to potentially, literally embrace the divinity that exists within the human before us. Now, we all do that. We're willing to do that when it feels comfortable. But the key is, when are we willing to do it when it feels a little bit uncomfortable or really uncomfortable? Or where we can tell that when we do it, we're shifting and changing a pattern of life that we've lived for 2 years, 20 years, 50 years, potentially 200 years, maybe longer, right? The key for us today in understanding the concept and the reality of how to use it, which we're not even into yet, we're just still talking about the thing itself, is to look at that which has been presented to you today as both oddly stimulating and deeply stirring and incredibly freeing, and ask yourself, the individual, where today am I willing to heal? Wendy's pointing to her hair. Your mind. Well, no, who says your mind's in your head? That's the one thing to start, heal that. Let's start with that, all right? Mind is omniscient. And when we talk about the mind in the individual, we're not talking about the brain, by the way. Take classes, January 24th. Where am I willing to heal? Where am I willing to live from a place of wholeness? Which certainly starts with seeing the self as wholeness, as perfection. But really, can you see it in others? I was telling a story earlier this morning to a friend of mine where I was confronted with an individual that just went through a great trauma in their life. And we have a mutual dear friend. And I showed up. I did what I was supposed to do. But I didn't want to hug him. You know, I'm still pissed at him. I'm really pissed. And my friend said, you need to hug. Like your loved one has gone through trauma. You need to hug them. I'm like, I don't think so. No, that's your thought. That ain't my thought, right? And her husband, my other friend, goes, yeah, that's what you need to do. And my mind and my heart said, no. There was 2 letters that went into that, and the second one was you. And my friend took me and walked me over and just put me in front of them. He said, hug them. And in that moment, the love of the divine that exists within us came up, right? Now, am I still pissed at that person? Yeah, I'm still pissed. I haven't healed from that. I'm willing to be open to heal, but I'm not quite there yet. But what I do know is that by not being open and receptive to letting the divine guide me into that next expression of healing and co-creation, then I'm not doing my part that I know exists in the vast ecology of inner space and creating a shift in all of humanity. I have to do that. But for what we all have to do for that to happen is to let go. The song that we sang last week was, I release and I let go. I let the Spirit run my life. Blah, 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 blah. I'm only here for God. Now, that was a pretty lyrics, right? An okay rendition of it. But if you think about it, what we're being called to do is, are we really willing to release and let go? And all it takes is one release at a time. That's all it takes. Right? And are we really willing to let Spirit run our life? In other words, old school metaphysics says, get your bloated nothingness out of the way. That's what that means. Get your own thoughts out of the way and trust it. And then the last piece is, am I really only here for God? Now, I'm sure that stirs up and conjures up some stuff of like, the hell with that. Like, no. Because there isn't a secure, clear understanding of how the individual you defines that power. If you're hanging on to some old ideology that it's either going to reward you or punish you, then you're setting yourself up for success or failure, as opposed to realizing that it's just simply an impersonal, infinite, omniscient, omnipotential power that's there. It cannot, it shall not, it will not judge. It's not part of its nature. Any judgment that's taking place is in your own mind. Wendy says there, right? So release the judgment. And in so doing, that's how you step into that next phase, which is the phase of co-creation. But so often we think that in co-creation that we have to do the majority of the creating, but we don't. Our role in co-creation is to set the intent, to have faith, and let the law do its part and not get in the way. Let it show up. And as I often work with students and people that will see me as a practitioner, is that when you are ready to meet your manifestation, literally open your arms and tell yourself, I'm ready to meet and greet and embrace my good as it shows up. and hold it as long as the vibration and the resonance field of it is a match to my soul. And the minute it's not, I bless it, I release it, and I let it go about its business, opening myself up to the co-creation for more and more and more to come. But the only way that can happen for us is if we open our mind today to believing that the thing itself is. Thank you.